Good morning.
So I am going to, while we wait for some of the guests to get on, I'm going to let our esteemed and respected lender, Renee from Cornerstone First, give us a brief update, and we're going to get started in about 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Renee,
You want me to wait or you want me to start now?
let's go.
Okay, let's go. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, I'm in
Friday.
Good morning, Renee.
So, a lot going on in our business, a lot going on. The Fed spoke to give you a quick little market update. For what that is worth, they are predicting 3 rate cuts this year. Now, the market's already baking that in, as you saw the stock market rally. However, fiscal policy, I believe, is at odds with the Fed policy because the government's still spending tons of money. There's still high inflation. I'm not quite sure how this will all reconcile itself. Over the next week, we have a lot of Fed speakers getting up to give commentary, which I believe is going to yet again send us into some volatility here. So for borrowers or buyers that you have out there, we're recommending locking loans if you're closing in the next 30 days. If you have a longer closing date, you might want to take a little roll of the dice and see if you can get a slightly lower rate. If in fact we get a rate cut, I'm not personally, I don't think we're going to see one anytime soon. Rates are still holding in the high 6s to low 7s. So, we're still moving along with rates where they were back in January. So we need some push here on the 10-year to get it below 4.35 in order to see rates come back down under the 7s like they were a month or so ago. So Rob wanted me to also talk about the big bomb that was dropped on y'all on Friday from NAR. So obviously, from a lender perspective, the only real category that this presents an immediate issue is with VA buyers, because VA buyers are not going to be able to pay for a buyer agent compensation, which in my opinion, in the next few months, I think we will have to see some amendment to this rule, because you're going to be boxing out a whole group of buyers that, in my opinion, are the ones we should be helping the most. So that's our immediate response to this. FHA will present a challenge, obviously, because those people usually don't have an extra 2 or 3% sitting around to pay a buyer's agent. Okay, so the only last thing I have to say is, as a lender and as your partner, the way we're going to approach this is the way we would approach any other issue when buyers do not have enough funds. And I believe seller concessions will be coming back. Buyers will be looking to drive up the price again and have a seller concession come back to pay the buyer broker. I think the good news for any of you that are buyer brokers now, if you get an agreement signed, now you're going to have a more loyal customer. So that's it. That's all we have on that in the 15 seconds I'm given.
Renee, thank you for that update. So the demise of the buyer agent is grossly exaggerated. I'm going to go through a history, which I just wish I was privy to earlier on in the process. But for those of you who don't know, the DOJ has been questioning the practices of the real estate industry for over 80 years now. There was a DOJ settlement done back in 2008, which seems like it was another bad timing with NAR. There was a second DOJ consent order or agreement that was done with NAR back in November of 2020. And back in November of 2020, there was what we call a different administration. Shortly after that administration, in 2021, somebody wanted to say, we're taking it back. And they wanted to retract their settlement with NAR. And it wound up in the courts. And the courts, you see here on my little document here, it says federal federal court, DOJ must uphold settlement with NAR. And everybody here, if you've gotten my link, you have a attachment to this document to refer back to, and you can just click on these little links to give you the full history, okay? So the DOJ withdraws their consent order, and the DOJ retracts their consent order. There's this organization called the Consumer Federation of America, who is of a belief, and I believe it's one individual there, that commissions are artificially inflated because of the rules that we have. And I'm going to prove to you that this little known agency, does anybody on this call know who the Consumer Federation of America is before we get going here?
Nope.
So nobody knows. If you know, just pipe up, but I really didn't know them either. But if we go down to this section here, when the DOJ files their statements of opinion or objects to practices that we have, they often quote research from the Consumer Federation of America, which is really interesting. And when I was looking back into some of the publications, I can see that the Department of Justice is drawing a lot of its conclusions from the opinions of this gentleman, Stephen Brobeck, who is a self-proclaimed authority at the Consumer Federation of America. I keep wanting to say finance. So back in January of 2023, the court system told the Department of Justice that their 2021 take back of the settlement would not be honored, that they were to abide by the agreement they made with NAR. And what did we start hearing a lot of after January of 2023? We started to hear a lot about these class action lawsuits, the copycat class action lawsuits. And it's my belief, not being a lawyer and not being motivated by anything other than the facts, that the DOJ, when the first door wouldn't open for them, they weren't allowed to renege on their agreement, that they made a decision to chime in on class action settlements with opinion letters. And that's a fact. They expressed very controversial opinions and very outspoken opinions to the courts on how they wanted to see this case settled. And that influenced the decision and the new rules that were originally proposed.
Rob?
Yeah, let me mute everybody.
Rob, oh.
Go ahead. Fran, unmute your side and mute some others. Go ahead.
So just so you know, back in 2021, when this whole 2020, when this whole situation came up with the DOJ, some people may remember at this time, this was the time that they were requesting that we publish in the MLSs what compensation was being offered out to the buyers, brokers, so that the consumer was aware of what was going on. And then, you know, we agreed and we still moved forward with their request, and then they did pull back. But I don't know if some people might remember that, especially in New Jersey, where we had to start displaying what that commission would be to a buyer's agent if it was being offered. So it was their request initially to do what we did and to even further enhance it. And then they decided to pull back, and it does have a lot to do with the administration.
And Fran, I'm gonna put this statement out there, which is at the end of this call, our fears should be alleviated a bit. There should be some transparency, and there should be some order in why things occurred, okay, and where it leaves us at the end of these decisions. And Fran, for one thing I see coming out of this, which is a major positive, is that buyers, okay, are not going to be at the mercy of the person that operated a super key and opened the door. There has to be a more defined relationship And I think it's a positive thing that the buyers recognize that although they weren't previously writing the check for the commission, but they were indirectly paying for the commission. Okay. There's a
Right.
discussion who pays for the commission in the old model. Is it the buyer or the seller? I can argue it both ways. Technically, it's the seller who makes the check out, but it's from the proceeds, it's from the funds that the buyer brings to the table.
Correct.
Okay, so the buyer should be respected more in the process, but I am such a creature of habit, and the systems seem to be working just perfectly fine for me. And who's going to move my cheese? But I see that as being a positive. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about how the skilled agents might actually wind up benefiting from this particular pivot or change. So all the news is not bad. I want to give you transparency as to why it happened, because being a committed professional like all of us are here, trying to, we're really solopreneurs trying to help families achieve the American dream, buying a house, right? And so many of us take that so passionately that we're like, why are they picking on our industry? And I'm even going to go into, where are these headlines coming from and how do we debunk those? Okay. So, so this settlement here there was a reason why it happened, and it was because the DOJ didn't like the agreement that they were in when a new administration came. Whether the agreement is good or bad, I'm just telling you why I believe it happened. So the DOJ uses this pending class action litigation to revoke their agreement with NAR, which the court said that they had to appeal. And Fran, they effectively did that very well. Don't you agree? I mean, they found the back door to get out of the agreement.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So I promise you, most of the stuff you're going to hear is really good. All of it's going to be useful and giving you ammunition. And on your email, I'm just going to show everybody here while I have everybody here. We have in the Mastermind link that you all should have gotten, you have this link here, which takes you to all this information that I'm going over here. Okay. So you all have this at your disposal, so don't need to worry about taking notes. I would really just have your attention and listen to what's going on. So, one bit of bad news, or one bit of possibly bad news, is when you read all the press releases and the propaganda about what's going on, something is missing. And what's missing is it says this litigation resolves all the seller side and copycat litigation, but it doesn't address buyer side litigation. Fran, did your team there discuss that? And Fran's active at our local NAR and state NAR.
We haven't really gotten into those discussions because there's just a lot that has come through all at once. But we've talked about the whole buyer's agency, thing and how we're going to be handling it and, see what happens. But we have not discussed the buyer's litigations that are coming forward. Because you're right, it doesn't address it as far as I could see. I asked to try to get a copy of the proposed settlement, but I couldn't get it. Couldn't get my hands on it.
Yeah, I read this the other day. It came through the board of realtors. And NAR sent us.
If we were on the call with Wayne yesterday, I think he put up a link, or he said he may send it out to everyone. So if that's on the recording, Rob, later if you get that, he said he was going to put the 110 pages out there.
Did you hear? Look, in this settlement fact sheet, folks, NAR and plaintiffs have reached a proposed settlement agreement that would end litigation of claims brought on behalf of home sellers related to broker commissions. Okay, because an irony of ironies, we have sellers saying that they unfairly paid the commission to the buyer's agent, and then we have buyers in a separate action saying that they were in fact the ones who paid the commission because they brought the funds to the closing. Fran, and you must have at least from NAR an awareness that this other one might be the next shoe to drop, right?
Yeah, there are a few buyers litigation cases ongoing right now. And, I think it's gonna be, I get updates all the time. I haven't seen anything on the latest ones, that have come forward, but they're circulating throughout different areas in the US. And, we're just, I'm sure legislative meetings are gonna be very, very interesting this year in May. I'm going there but I do get updates in what they call the hub, and I haven't seen anything. I can send an email and ask where the ongoing buyer litigations are.
And Fran, I would just say that from a customer of NAR, I'm disappointed in the transparency to its leadership and to its membership. But with that said, perhaps they were handcuffed because they were actively involved in the negotiation. But I'm just going to put that out there and say I would have liked to have had, better transparency as to what was going on instead of the way that it was handled. But anyway, let me mute everybody else. I'm sorry. So this other case might be something that comes down. What's good about it is we're battle tested now because we've survived the first resolution of a litigation. Okay. And if you do any research on this Batten 2 case, which I guess is the second filing of 2 Battens, I'm not sure if it's 2 because they refiled the case or if it's 2 because there's Mr. and Mrs. Batten that are named in the case. But this one here, according to most legal scholars, is exponentially larger in the scope than the Sitzer, Burnett, and the Moral Commission suits and the copycat ones. So anyway, I want to put that out there. I want to go on record saying that this is a sleeping giant out there and something that we need to pay attention to. But I also feel that, we play such a critical role that, this would be like the medical profession when they had reform of insurance and they had Obamacare saying that I won't be able to make a living, right? It changed the way that they get paid. It changed the route to get paid, but people still need Medicare and the industry still exists. It just changed a little bit in its form. I put a history here of the DOJ attacking NAR practices that go back to the 1940s. So this is nothing new. I just wish that this was easier for me to find. I have followed after the litigation. I followed when the DOJ filed a statement of interest, which had some pretty broad opinions and referenced the Consumer Federation of America. I was like, let me look into this place. And a lot of the DOJ's beliefs and moves have been supported or they've been documented through publishings and research of the Consumer Federation of America. I don't know that much about the organization other than, when it's quoted in the DOJ filings, and that's where they get their information. It's got my attention. So here's a lot of information about, what's happened in our industry. This is a link if you want to read on the Batten 2 case. Which brings us to now. Today we have a choice, and which is better. Our choice is, we can be optimistic and possibly wrong, or we can be pessimistic and possibly right. The choice is yours, and your choice may influence the result, because there will be services provided to clients, buyers, and sellers. The form might change, but the industry won't. Okay. I'm going to quote something from Tom Toole, who was a recent guest on our Friday session, and he also spoke to our team leaders. And he asked, who knows what the only animal that charges into a storm that doesn't run away from it, and it's the buffalo. When the storm comes in, the buffalo changes direction, heads in the storm, because it knows if it runs into the storm, it will get out of it quicker. Okay, that's a great analogy for us. If we hit it head on and we run into the storm, we're going to get out of this quicker and stronger. Okay.
Personally, I don't think it's gonna make a big difference. The only thing it's gonna be is that the compensation is just not gonna be on MLS, so I guess there's gonna be a lot of buyers agents contacting listing agents when this deal goes through. And if you can convince the owners, the sellers to pay, somewhat of a commission to the buyer's agent, it just can't be trackable on the MLS.
Right. And Ron, some of that makes me feel like we're trying to undermine the system because we're putting it somewhere else, or you have to call us to get it. But I want to be real clear as to what my belief is, why it's being handled that way. Okay, because the unskilled, uncommitted agent is likely to be steered or influenced. Maybe they're influenced because they absolutely need that extra 1% or 0.5% to pay their bills. So they're going to make the wrong decision and steer people in the direction of properties that are offering the highest compensation to a door opener. Okay. And right now, what it wants to do is it wants to level the playing field, and it wants to not have everybody be transparently influenced, or maybe the wrong people influenced to look at their interest above that of their clients, which I think is another thing which is good about this, right? I'm not a big fan of selling somebody even if it's a moderately less appropriate house because it's significantly or partially paying me more money. Okay. I'm not a fan of that. Might be controversial, but when you do that, you'll have 5 extra transactions. Okay. That's what we do. I gave you a little link to what I found online. It was a minute YouTube rant about why CNN is wrong, something that's out there publicly. Here's some information about NAR correcting the records. Here's settlement fact sheet, litigation fact sheet. Okay. I'm going to relate this to many, many changes that have happened in our industry. Some of us on this call have been in the industry for 30 plus years, like myself. We remember before everything was available online to the customers, and we thought once it was available online, we would be insignificant. Okay, that never happened. Okay, we were crying foul when agencies came on and said, for $500 or $100, we'll list your property in the MLS. And we as an industry tried to kick them off the MLS. We're like, that's not fair. They can't do that. Who remembers those? Who's been in the business long enough and remembers those?
I remember those well, Rob.
So, but were they a critical player in today's environment?
No.
No.
They are not.
I mean, you don't even see help you sell anywhere.
Right. The founder of ForSaleByOwner.com or FSBO.com, for crying out loud, he listed his house with a broker.
Of course he did.
Okay. He wanted to get more money. So these have already been here. So we shouldn't fear for our livelihood or our careers unless, and I'm going to tell you an unless, but I'm going to make it wait a little bit. Okay. Redfin, who's been very critical, they were controversial by dropping out of NAR. The guy kind of turns my stomach between you and me. You can have your own opinion of the founder of Redfin, but I don't really care for him. He believes that the industry is charging too much, and he tries to deliver a discount service. The format for doing what's going to happen in July or August, whenever this gets approved, the substance already exists. It's just the format doesn't exist. The form is different, but the substance already exists. Because I went on to the Redfin site and it says, sign with us, save with us. When you hire a Redfin agent before your second home tour, we'll refund you 1/4 to 0.5% of your new home's purchase price. So they're already giving money back, and that's their business model. And I'm not seeing Redfin as a top competitor to our great agents and, you know, the other companies that we're competing with that deliver excellent service. So I think that there's a spot for the discount. There's somebody that wants to go to the dollar store, and there's somebody that wants to go to Neiman Marcus and get a quality service. And then on top of that, they say, if you buy with us, we'll list your house for 1%. And then there's a listing ad on, this is right off their website. If you list your house with us, it can be as low as 1%. And the asterisk there is if you buy with us. So they've kind of bundled the list and the purchase.
Bob,
Yes.
do you think ultimately this is going to benefit listing agents? Or do you think it's really not going to make much of a difference because of the fact that we're going to probably going to be negotiating buyers agents commissions off to the side?
So, I mean, it could go a couple of different ways, Michael. It could go where there's always been for sale by owners. There's always been discount companies to enter the listing into the MLS.
Yep.
Now there's going to be that option for the buy side, right? And that's going to be more prevalent to the individuals and practitioners who can't articulate the value proposition that we deliver. And Michael, how many years have you been doing this?
22.
22 years. What the industry has done poorly, in my opinion, is demonstrate the home purchase iceberg. Okay, and what I mean by that is I think only 10 or 15% of the iceberg sits above the water and 85 to 90% is below the water. All the things that we do are below the water, and we don't articulate it because we never had to. And now we need to demonstrate the activities that we do to earn our commission. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So those who should be fearful are those who lack the skills and the ability to communicate, to articulate the benefit that they have. If you can't, you could have great skills, but if you can't articulate what you're doing, you can't show that in advance, it's going to be a problem for you. Okay.
Mhm.
And, there will be another option for buyers to basically buy by themselves, right? Choose to go to a listing agent and try to negotiate the deal directly with them. But
A lot of buyers do via the internet now.
Right, but I see that as being a minority, and I see those as being, if any of you have listened to Chris Voss, he has some really great content on negotiating. You can just follow him on some YouTube stuff. But he puts clients into two categories. He calls them ELFs, which is easy, lucrative, and fun, and halves, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. That people have a tendency to do everything to circumvent us. Okay, those are the halves. Those are the people that you don't really want to focus on. Okay, we want to focus on the people that we can deliver value that appreciate it. Okay, and this is another statement. It's my opinion, and I think it's probably shared by most of our team here. Is if all I ever did was complete the transaction that we entered into and never got a referral from you in the future, I would prefer to work on another client that I can have a lifelong relationship with. And I wonder how many of us would consider ourselves transactional versus relationship based. Okay, and the more we focus on delivering service, if we articulate and demonstrate that we can be effective and deliver great service, I'm going to flip the script and I'm going to say we should be getting the gift at the closing for a great job done instead of having to give a gift. Our gift should be the service that we delivered, and it should be obvious to the consumer what we've done. So.
Hey, Rob, if I could just interrupt for just 1 second, I just would like to say that I hope that everyone on the call is really paying attention to everything that Rob is pointing out for us. I've had the occasion to speak with agents at other companies recently, and not one of them has heard from their management team about what are we going to do and how are we going to still remain successful and positive. And here we are, we're sitting here on this call and we're getting a game plan. We're getting pretty much a step-by-step way to be successful going forward. So please take advantage of this and pay attention, because even the historical information is really important, and it may come up when you're sitting with a client, how did this all start? So I just wanted to mention that. Sorry.
Right. So Robert, thank you for that. And you brought out a point that I want to say, which isn't on my document here, which is, be loud, be proud, reach out, start the conversation, don't make it a big deal, and be armed with the information to be able to answer the question. If somebody says, "Hey, what do you think about that litigation?" I'd say, you know what? There's a lot of misinformation out in the media, clickbait to try to get eyeballs and try to create attention. But at the end of the day, there is one thing that I think is really good about it, which is buyers are now going to have to select their agent and agree on what services they're providing in advance, which I think is a great thing. Okay, I honestly believe that's a great thing. Okay, so I'm going to go through what we know, path forward.
Amen. Hey, Rob, can I ask you a question? This is Irene Trokin.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going right to the nuts and bolts. This kicks in July. Is it true?
The tentative settlement. So it's targeted to be effective mid-July.
Okay, so then starting mid-July, on the listing, we won't see any BB at the bottom. Is that true?
No. On the MLS, when you do a search, you won't see that. But I'm going to go into how that's going to be handled, as I believe from the information publicly available. So you're skipping ahead just a little bit, Irene, but I will cover that. I promise you.
Okay. I like to get to the crux of it.
Yeah. You're a high D. You're a high D. Give me the facts and let me get off.
Exactly.
Rob, can I ask
Yes.
a question? When we were on with Remax the other day, they said that our settlement was going May 9th or May 8th, the Remax settlement. So have you been privy to all the agreements in that settlement, and are they basically the same? Because then as Remax agents, if the same things are required, is it effective that we have to do these things?
Okay, so great question, Frank, great question. And the settlements are different. Okay, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to explain, there are what I know the Remax settlement, and I believe that settlement was probably a template or very similar to the one that Anywhere, which is, Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Corcoran, and some other brands, and Keller Williams are all included in that settlement. They put money out and they proposed a settlement. That settlement, Fran, has less changes that we need to implement than this. Okay, that settlement was the original roadmap until last Friday at 10:30. And the reason why last Friday at 10:30 it changed is because the DOJ did not like that settlement. Okay, so the DOJ piped in with content from the CFA, and they changed it dramatically. Our agreement was that we would post the commissions on our website, right? That were being offered out. Okay, but it didn't prohibit us from putting them on the MLS. This is a major change. So here's what we know. This was before that MLSs weren't requiring us to have clear cooperation, put out a commission offering to be on the MLS. That ship has already sailed and it's been out there for a while. If everything goes through, no buyer broker comp is going to be listed on the MLS. It's gonna limit steering to some effect. Here's something that you might not know. Compensation still can be, offers of compensation by sellers still can be made. Okay, there's no, not only is there not a prohibition of it, it's explicitly stated in the agreement that sellers can still offer compensation to buyers. That's where we talked about it being a little bit like the commercial industry, where it's not advertised, you need to call and ask. Here's a great thing. If this goes through, buyers will be required to sign a buyer's rep form. You know, the industry needs to create updated forms and have, practices for the way the industry operates and how that's going to matriculate into the new regulations. And I don't even need to say this, but commissions are negotiable. Okay, they'll remain negotiable. They've always been negotiable. The path forward, understand the facts, educate your tribe. If you have pending buyers and sellers, educate them. If I was talking to a listing that I had right now that's likely to be under contract before this settlement, nothing changes. Okay, and it's not like they're getting ripped off. I would tell them it's not like you're losing anything. Okay, because after the settlement, we're still going to have offers of compensation. Okay, so it's not like they're losing out by transacting sooner. My buyers that are on the fence, I might say to them, I don't know, there may be more people that aren't offering buyer comp after July 15th. So to have a little bit more certainty, why don't we put a little more priority on getting your transaction done before then? Make sense, Ron? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a good point.
Another thing is, when change happens, Ron, and something happens and it catches you off guard, are your emotions that you have normally productive or destructive?
Destructive.
Yeah,
People are fearing for their career and their livelihood right now, which they don't need to. We need to process and keep our emotions in check. I do a lot of flying back and forth to our Florida offices. Right now I'm in New Jersey, but every single time they have this announcement which says, hey, if the aircraft decompresses, put your own oxygen mask on first before you do a child, because, if you pass out, you can't help anybody, right? So we need to make sure that we're in good shape so that we can help others, okay? Because if we're panicking, what do you think our tribe is going to do? The people that trust us, are they going to be making the right decisions if they have inaccurate information, or if they have a representative that's, quite frankly, an emotional mess? I don't think so.
we're
Okay,
the educators. We have to educate them.
correct.
Hey, Rob,
So-
could you give an
We've
example
always
of
been
number three?
educators.
Okay.
Rob, can you give some examples on the what we know right now, number three, how that conversation might look?
Examples in what respect, Glenn?
Comp offers can still be made. So I'm sitting at a listing appointment. What can I do?
So July 15th, after this happens, okay, my vision would be that we are going to then say, we'd like to make an offer and publish it on the MLS, which I believe is likely to be done. And it may even be in a searchable field, Glenn, where it says, hey, we're going to offer 2-3% a seller concession to the buyer to allow them to pay for representation. Okay, but it's eminently clear.
Rob, can I cut in?
Yes.
It's my understanding. I heard a reading of the document, and it says that you cannot in any not only in the compensation part, but anywhere else in the MLS, in the remarks, in any other portion of the MLS, can any form of compensation be provided or disclosed to the buyer, to the buyer's agent. So that may be something you want to look into, because I've seen a couple of videos, and it's very specific on
So,
the wording
Yolanda,
that you cannot put it not in other portions. Yeah.
so Yolanda, I think, I appreciate that comment. I think maybe a lot of our peers feel that same way, but there's a difference between offer of compensation and offer of concession. Okay, and
Got
that's the fine line. So what they're looking to accomplish, Yolanda, is they're looking to say, as a seller, I don't want my buyer pool to be limited because they don't have a credit to pay for a buyer's agent, which is one of the problems. So if we put it down as
Got
a
it.
buyer concession, then the buyer can, by a prior written agreement, contract with somebody and say, I'm going to pay you 0.5% at Redfin. I'm going to pay you 3% at, full service brokerage and anything in between. Okay. That's giving control to the buyer.
Right.
And that's where we have to expose the full iceberg. Okay. We have to articulate what that iceberg looks like and everything that we do in the process.
Rob, if I might.
That's a great observation. Couple of other questions, then I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So might that make the buyer think that that's that much less coming off of the price of the property, which is not necessarily going to go to my buyer agent? If let's say they're shopping on their own and they see buyer concession provided.
So Terry, the answer to that is yes, and it's the same as the FSBO argument. A seller can FSBO their house, not pay a listing agent a commission because they don't believe that there's any value. And now buyers are going to be able to cut brokers out unless we articulate the value proposition. And our industry has never focused on delivering and discussing and articulating everything we do for the buyer side, because we would just say, Terry, it's free. It's free to you. You don't pay for it. And
I'm just curious why they haven't realized that if the buyer is not able to compensate an agent or a company to represent them, then it's conflict of interest for the seller's listing agent.
Can you repeat that for me, Terry?
Why hasn't the DOJ realized that if a buyer is not able to compensate an agent to give them representation, then more than likely it's going to go to the listing agent, and that's basically a conflict of interest.
Okay, so Terry, they did recognize that. That's why they gave us this path. They gave us the path to pay a buyer concession, and the buyer gets to determine if they want to do that.
I didn't realize they gave us that path. I thought you were giving us that path.
No. This is what we know. So everybody, when they first read it, everybody operates in emotion and fear instead of fact and logic. So
I got a question, Will.
And Terry, and I'll come back to the question. To your point, if that were the case, I've read that there will be a lot of fair housing issues because you're going to be discriminating against the first-time low down payment, probably lower income buyers. So that would be a fair housing issue. Another question out there.
Yeah, the seller's thing that they list, is it going to be as a percent, a dollar value, or they're just going to be giving one?
Tomato, commission, concession. How's that?
No, it's not my answer. Because you can't live.
It would likely be a percentage, but it could be a dollar amount.
Well, how can they give a dollar amount if they don't have the sales price of the house? Okay, all right. Thanks.
I mean, Robert, somebody moved your cheese, buddy. Anything can happen.
Yeah, I have a similar question, because now instead of saying, well, if there's no buyer broker involved and you don't have to split your commission, why don't I just pay you 2.5 instead of 5? Why, you know what I'm saying? What they can negotiate with this, the seller can negotiate with the listing agent to say, well, there's no one else here in the mix. I don't have to pay you 5. I'll pay you 2. I'll pay you 2.5.
Right. Okay. So I'm sorry. Who's that speaking?
Irene.
So Irene, that's a great question. And I think that on the surface, that's like, oh, it might seem like a negative. But again, we need to undress the iceberg. We need to explain to them what happens. And if we're going to do the buyer side of the equation, we're doing more work. And if you can't articulate and you can't make a case for yourself to earn what you're doing, then honestly, I don't think you deserve it. And that's why I'm here as a servant to give you the roadmap to earn what you're worth. All
Yeah,
right. So
you
I
can
think
even
overall,
tell,
you know, people gain market share during times of transition. Okay. Whether it's an economic transition or it's a regulatory transition. Okay. We are going to, those of us who are on the journey with me, we're going to take advantage of this and we're going to embrace everything that's good about it. And I think, and I'm not trying to be Pollyanna here, but I think the good outweighs the bad in this case.
Yes.
Okay. And you have a choice of what you focus on. You can focus on, you know, the extra 10% of buyers that decide to cut us out and get that seller's concession to the buyer. And you can be angry about that, or you can focus on the 90% of people that see the value, appreciate the services that we do, and will recommend us to their friend, family, and their tribe, their, you know, and everybody that they know. So that's what I believe.
And Rob, I see the other benefit. They will be signing a buyer's agreement with us. You
Yes,
won't have buyers, you know, you run around, take them all over town, and then they buy with their Uncle Benny.
And the other thing is, Colleen, we'll have a level playing field, right?
Absolutely.
So if the playing field is level and you're concerned, it's time to up your game. Level and you're concerned, you got to up your game. You got to.
What happens
you
with
got to up
what happens with dual agency?
I believe it will still be allowed. Okay. There's nothing in the settlement that prohibits it. It might take a different form. Okay, so you might take a different path from a paperwork standard to get there, but I see nothing that prohibits it. So I only have another 11 minutes. I'm going to stay a little bit later because I'm sure there's a lot of questions. So the path forward is understanding the facts, processing our emotions, and taking appropriate action. Okay, that's how we move forward with this. You know, chicken or egg, who pays the buyer's agent, buyer, seller, or both? Okay. There's no prohibition on it. I think the industry will migrate, and it might even be regionally in terms of norms. Okay. Buyer agreements must clearly outline relationships, and buyers are presented with a variety, and buyers will be presented with a variety of different options. There's going to be all these new companies coming out there saying we do this for that. I expect that. I'm not sure if it happens. Here's facts. New practices are coming under any circumstance, whether they don't see any probable scenario where we go back to the way we did business a year ago. I don't see that happening at all. I see co-op commissions no longer being on the MLS in almost every version of the agreement. Every buyer is going to be expected or required to sign a buyer rep agreement if they're working with an agent that's a member of an MLS. Commissions are effectively decoupled. Okay, originally I thought that, oh, geez, this is a problem, but I think that this is a good thing because you're giving transparency and you're giving the ability for consumers to negotiate. So the only people that are afraid of this are the people who don't have the skills or can't articulate what we do. And we have still 213 people. Is there anyone here that feels like you're grossly overpaid in the current environment that you're in? Just to unmute yourself and say, I'm overpaid.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So we deliver a critical service. You know, when the economy was shut down, we were deemed an essential business. We are an essential business. We have in my opinion, a moral obligation to help as many people as we can by being truthful, honest, and skilled. Okay. And you can't be truthful and unskilled, or you can't be skilled and dishonest. I think those two have to be, they have to come together for us to win in this game.
To go back to what I think Terry was saying, when you get a seller that says, well, why should I have to pay the buyer's agent? Now, because, I'm only gonna pay you 2.5 or 3%. But we need outside brokers, and that's what you need to explain to the seller. And if you're leaving it up just to me to sell your house, you're only getting maybe a third of the market. When you put it on, put it to them this way, that we need the outside brokers to help us get your house sold for the top dollar. So you need to really educate your buyers and your sellers and tell them that this is what you.
So Ron, I have a pivot on that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I'm passionate about this like you have no idea. Okay, and there is traditional education where you have to tell them, they have to understand all those words. I love you, Ron, but we have to change the way that we communicate, and we have to say, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. Hey, Ron, when we go to sell your house, if a buyer has to pay their agent a commission, and we're not offering a commission, do you think that might limit? We're not offering a concession, or we're not offering a commission, because you still can offer a commission, you just can't publish it on the MLS. If we're not offering compensation or a concession, do you think that the pool of buyers would be larger or smaller?
Yeah, so you're putting it in a different spin.
No, I'm asking you, like, how do you think a seller would ask? Is if we're not offering compensation to a buyer's agent and a buyer has to pay that out of pocket, do you think the pool of people interested in our house will be larger or smaller? Obviously, it's going to be smaller, right?
Of course.
But when you as the homeowner tell me it's smaller, right? And then I would say to you, Ron, if the house next to me is offering a buyer concession and I'm not offering a buyer concession, do you think a buyer that needs to pay a commission is going to reflect that in the offer they make on your house?
That's a good approach.
Right? So when they answer those two questions, they've owned the result. It's completely obvious to them, Ron. But when we tell them that, I just think when I tell you something, you could always push back on it. So I'm sorry to be passionate about that. And then some people might be stubborn and say, I don't want to offer it, but we can still choose to work with them. But I don't believe that's the best pathway forward. And I'm not intimidated by the change. I'm embracing the change. Okay. It's the, I don't know, is there like 1.5 million realtors? It's the 1,500,000. It's the 1,499,800 that aren't on this call that won't have that information, won't have that pivot. There's uncertainty. Uncertainty is when we need to step up. That's when we need to rise, right? Back in 2008, when there was uncertainty, we got CDPEs. We helped people do short sales, right? At RE/MAX, we were leaders. At hopefully where you're at, you're a leader. You're not a follower. Co-op commission is no longer in the MLS. Buyers need to sign a buyer agreement. Commissions are now decoupled. There's uncertainty. Settlement needs approval. Some brokerages are excluded. These are facts. For some reason, the courts or the plaintiffs don't want to settle with Warren Buffett. They think he has a lot of money. They want $4 billion from them. I don't know where that lands. I have my opinions. NAR's had a lot of changes. They probably could have done a better job communicating and maybe even a more inclusive settlement. But I deal with what's going on. I choose my emotions. I choose the behavior I'm going to take. And I see a tremendous opportunity. It's not perfect, but I see it as an opportunity. Buyer agreements must disclose in writing and in advance of any payment. This is all good stuff. I had a mini session down in West Delray, and I was just telling people in our Florida team there that I must have had to do like 9 signatures just to rent a car. And that's so much less than buying a house. So this is good. Like disclosure and setting the rules is a good thing. We define alignment, compensation, and services. I believe an educated consumer will choose me. An educated consumer will choose us. A confused consumer will be frozen.
Hey,
Uh,
Rob, question.
Yes.
A moment ago, you said something about potentially being paid by both buyer and seller. Did I mishear?
I believe that there's a way that you can get paid by both. That might conflict with New Jersey law, but there's going to be a lot of legislative and regulatory changes that need to be done to comply with the new paradigm, in my opinion. But if we didn't have a local board, we didn't have the New Jersey and the Florida Association of Realtors lobbying for us, we'd all be making random decisions and probably getting into hot water, or our competition would be doing things that are not appropriate and maybe having a competitive advantage over us because they're breaking a rule that wasn't clear. So we will give you guidance, Jackie. There is no prohibition on both paying in the existing 108-page settlement. So if a buyer agreement says that you're going to pay me 2.5% and the seller says I'm going to offer a commission of 1%, then you'd get the extra 1.5% from the buyer. Okay, that might conflict with New Jersey and might conflict with Florida, but we'll have that figured out.
Rob, I have a question for you as well. I'm okay with the buyer's agreement if it's something that's going to be required for every agent, every buyer's agent. Is that a requirement or is that just something that's recommended?
So,
because
in the proposed settlement, it's a requirement if you participate in an MLS. Okay, I don't know if it the settlement can't make law in New Jersey. It can't make it a law, but it is saying that for the Sherman Act and antitrust, that if you're going to participate in an MLS, you must have a buyer agency agreement in advance before accepting a payment. Okay. If anybody has to get off with a hard stop at 10:30, I want to tell you that this is your time to lead. This is my time to lead you. And this is your time to lead and be the voice and control the message to the people that are in your sphere, the people that you have the ability to influence, and most importantly, the people that you're working with today. I would pick up the phone, call all my existing home sellers under contract, not under contract, and I'd have this conversation before the call comes to me. Okay. I believe we have a opportunity of a lifetime here if we invest in ourselves. I believe the part-time agent's going to be challenged because they're not going to be able to deliver the services. They're not going to be able to articulate the value. Okay. And they're going to be extensively eliminated from competition. And that might eliminate NAR membership, that might eliminate some other things. So anyway, it's my time to lead and it's your time to lead. That's my message to you. And I have probably another 5 minutes or so of mandatory things I want to get off. Then I want to stay on for questions. Buyer agreements must disclose. Sellers are allowed to sign listing agreements where they pay a buyer broker commission. Some more of my thoughts. We often fear the unknown, but now is the time to rise to the occasion. Buyers and sellers need our services perhaps more than ever, and we're just going to be taking a different path to get there. Okay, do not second guess your capabilities and skills, and if there are some skills that you need to improve, we got to improve them. That's why we're here together as a group. Contact your existing and future clients and define the message. Those who are freaking out, okay, those who are freaking out either don't understand what's happening, which is the point of today's call, or check this out. They're afraid that their lack of skill will be exposed. Okay. So if you're freaking out and you're committed professional, now you should be out of the freaking out category unless you don't have the skills, which is the knowledge, okay, the skill set to close transactions, and the ability to communicate that. Those are all necessary now. Will home prices drop? I don't think so. Will commissions fall? It's possible. I think the biggest drop in commissions will be the people who buy on their own without representation and try to pocket that money. But LegalZoom hasn't eliminated trial attorneys, has it? WebMD, you're not doing your own surgery. So I don't think that the fundamentals are going to change dramatically. The Obamacare didn't cause all the doctors to leave because the compensation structure was different. Will commission steering end? I doubt it. And commission steering is probably not a good thing. But if you define how much you're getting paid, so if you're saying, I'm going to work for you for 2.5%, and then there's a seller that wants to influence and motivate the sale, and he offers 3% commission, you can't take that 3%. That's a change. Okay, you have to accept what's in your agreement. I'm not an attorney, but from what I read, you can't make that extra 0.5%. That has to go back to the client. Will many agents exit the industry? Who here thinks that this is going to force the uncommitted and underskilled agents to exit the industry like me? Just raise your hand.
I do.
See it. I think it's a positive.
Sure.
Will the tech companies overtake the industry? Not because of this. Okay. Whatever they have up their sleeve is independent of this. This has absolutely zero impact on the tech companies to take over our industry. Sellers need buyers, buyers need homes. So now there's going to be 3 agreements. There's going to be the seller and the listing agent, the buyer and the buyer agent, and then the seller and the buyer. So those are the 3 agreements that need to happen now. And that middle one, the buyer and the buyer agent, is the shift that we're seeing right now. No economic value is gained or lost with this. We are just redefining who and what services are provided and how they are to be paid. And I say transparency is good. Transparency is good. I'm proud of the team that we have. I'm proud of the services that we provide. And I welcome more transparency because I think it will expose those who operate in the shadow and don't deliver and do what they're supposed to do. The winners in this scenario are those who can articulate their value proposition and they have the skills to back it up and deliver. The losers are the non-committed, underskilled agents who cannot articulate the value proposition. The designated door opener and the super key operator will be eliminated. Okay. Don't defend, don't be upset about when people question and say, hey, the 6% is over, or, the cartel has been destroyed. Don't defend it, just educate them on what's going on, because I think an educated consumer will either be an elf or they'll be a half. And if they're a half, they're already a half. They're hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. We don't want that customer anyway. We want the easy, lucrative, and fun customer who understands. We want the educated customer too that understands the value that we deliver. And for the record, nobody said that they were overpaid. Protect your relationships, deliver a bulletproof process which articulates your value proposition. Showcase the complexity, but deliver simplicity. So when we're talking to our clients, they don't understand the complexity of the process. So what we need to do is we need to have a buyer conversation, okay, a buyer script, a way to communicate to buyers the complexity of the process and show how we simplify it. That's how we win all day long. So that concludes, I'm only 6 minutes over. That concludes my presentation. You all have this trove of knowledge embedded in the email that you received. Now I'm ready for any question you have.
So Rob, I have a 2-part question.
Go ahead.
Rob,
So the first, First
Glenn
question
first.
is, as a listing agent, can I then say I need to see your buyer's agreement with the offer as a part of the
Right.
package?
I would believe not. Why would you
How do you know that
want to
they're
see it?
qualified?
How would you know who's qualified?
If let's say they're on a home that they do qualify because there's compensation being offered, and then you have a home that they don't, and they don't have the money to buy it.
So that would
Right.
that would be beholden upon the pre-approval letter, and there would probably be something in there saying they don't need to sell their house and they have the funds to pay the down payment, closing costs, and commission.
So
So the
we should
buyers,
include that in the term sheet that we have with our offer guidelines to say you need to include that.
If you're not offering it, if your client, your seller's not offering a concession, or there's not a commission where you're offering that's not promoted on the MLS, then that would be a best practice. Yes. You got a
Rob?
two-part question. 1 second. Let Glenn do his 2 parts, then we'll go on.
So my second part is from a Zillow perspective. I haven't done Zillow in many years, but some of my agents do it. You go out and your goal is to meet, set the appointment, and get on site, right?
Yes.
Is that gone for people that are committed to an MLS?
So I read somewhere that, well, you know what it was? I read it on the Redfin, says that if you want to get a rebate, you need to sign a buyer agreement before your second showing, so that they were doing the first showing kind of as a courtesy. My belief is there may be like a one-time, do you know when you work with the FSBO, you can get like a commission protection for a single showing?
Yeah.
I believe you could probably do that for buyers, and then it would be beholden upon them to get a buyer's agency agreement done. But I don't have the answer, so I just want to be completely honest, but that's my vision of how that plays out.
Right.
Rob, there's already a form out there for the soft show that says when you're going to show one property that you can put it on there. You put whatever you're showing them the first time or the second time. So
Okay,
it's already created.
so Deborah is a volunteer on our association in Florida, and I thank you for your commitment to help the industry, and thanks for that fact.
Yeah, it was created in 2006, believe it or not.
Okay.
so
Next.
Rob,
now-
does the
next.
buyer's agreement become part of the actual contract?
No.
No.
The
Okay.
buyer agreement is, so remember, Terry, I said there's 3 agreements. There's listing agent and seller, buyer agent and buyer, and then seller and buyer together. So next question.
Rob, I have a question. It's Jackie with Motto Mortgage. So when I do a pre-approval for someone, I have to provide to them a fee sheet so they have an idea before they go shopping. Do you want me to put half the commission, like use 6% and put half the commission as a fee that may, worst case scenario? I like to do worst case scenario. How do you want me to show this on a fee sheet to my buyers?
So I'd like you to do standard of practice or most probable scenario, and then just give them an asterisk. It's kind of like, Jackie, if they're buying a house that needs flood insurance, right? You're not going to put the cost of flood insurance in every home, but they might stumble across a home that needs an extra monthly payment that influences or affects the amount of money they qualify for. But great question. Next.
FHA, VA, FHA.
So here's what I'm going to say is the FHA and VA are government products, and that the government's going to figure out how to allow us to serve the clients. I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm sure that there's no political party that wants to be responsible for eliminating veteran home ownership. That's what I believe. So
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, Ron. Be positive. Next question.
No, I get answer. I got those questions at my class the other day. What about those?
Well, tell them exactly what I said. I don't see any scenario where the government's going to allow our veterans and the FHA buyers to be carved out because of a business practice. And I'll stand behind that. I'll fly to Florida for you if it's false. So
Rob,
let's go next.
All right, my first one is, are there any MLSs in New Jersey, like Central Jersey, that are privately owned that are not subject to the Nar Settlement?
Is
State
Mr.
MLS.
Durso? Can you handle that one?
So as of right now, we are abiding by the Nar settlement as well. We're not bound to do anything specific, but we are going to do what the standard of practice becomes because it just makes sense. We never required buyer compensation in our format, so we didn't violate anything in that respect. But we're gonna go along with what everybody else in the state is required to do. It's just the way it is.
So Rob, do you see, and I'll ask this to Deborah, Fran, Blakely. Do you see consolidation of MLSs and boards? Because I think that membership's going to need to be more competitive, and there's probably going to need to be less infrastructure to be relevant moving forward. So Rob, do you see that in simple yes or no?
I do. I absolutely do.
Fran, Blakely, if you're still on, do you see that happening?
I'm not sure what's going to happen. We at the New Jersey MLS have been trying to do at least a cooperative data share so that members don't have to be a member of several MLSs without everybody losing their, membership. And to the first question that was asked, Garden State is another broker owned, not NAR, not realtor owned MLS. And I think
Is NJMLS realtor owned?
we are yes, we are realtor owned. We are part of NAR. We are part of NAR.
So you're released from the settlement.
Yes.
Okay.
And there is a provision in the settlement for the others to get out of it. I believe it's $100 per member.
Yeah.
Huh?
$100 a member, and they'll let us in.
Yeah.
So Rob, do you plan on coughing that up?
No.
Okay,
No.
good to know. And then Deborah in Florida, do you see consolidation of boards and MLSs with this?
We've had a Wild West down here to begin with when once Board of Choice became about, with going after all of the agents. And so the bigger boards are taking over to begin with. Between Miami and Beaches, we own a good part of it. And then even the smaller boards up north and the Panhandle and all around there have been consolidating to begin with. So there'll probably be a lot more of that just out of ease because they get more services.
So Glenn Baker has expanded his team into Massachusetts. He said there's one MLS in the entire state. I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, unfortunately, there's going to be short-term pain. Some people will be losing positions and relevance, but I think it's going to be long-term gain. That's my prediction. Less boards, less MLSs, more choices for agents to participate or not. Next question.
Rob, my second one was, what prevents like a company from starting that's just housing broker compensation, like agreements, like a non-MLS branded, like they would just be a private company that says, we'll house it for you. Like what prevents that from happening?
So let me throw this one out there. What if Showing Time, when you made the appointment, told you what the commission was after you made the appointment?
Right, that was my third question. Like my third question is, what prevents Showing Time from doing something like that?
I don't think anything does.
Not that we know of yet. We talked about all those options, actually. We also talked about, since we can still, I think, publicize it on our website with RE/MAX and all the others, maybe a link to the website from the MLS that will bring them to, so that they can see the compensation.
Zillow
We
already
want the
has it.
compensation to remain fair amongst everybody. That's the thing. Whatever,
Right.
if it's 10%.
Friend, my North Star here is that, we are not overpaid for the services that we provide, and that the market forces will give us the ability to make a living, and those that aren't able to articulate and to deliver competent services will be eliminated. Next question. I want to just keep this going.
What about putting, using Showtime for compensation there in the remarks in Showtime?
Right, well, I mean, Ron, those are things that we're not sure of yet, so, let's go through, anybody who hasn't asked a question yet, I want to get you on, and then I'll stick on as long as I can. Joe D, you had a question?
Rob, I have a question.
Go ahead, Scott.
So if, as a listing agent, we have cooperation included, and we put in, however we can word it, that there's cooperation, but then the buyer's agent with their signed contract has a commission structure with the buyer's agent, how does it work with who's actually going to pay the buyer's commission? Because at that point, we have said there's cooperation, the buyer's agent has their agreement with their paid cooperation. Does one trump the other, or how do we know who is paying the commission? Or do they both?
So I think I think in the new paradigm, Scott, like if I have a buyer agreement where I'm going to get paid 1%, I'm a discount broker, and then Scott, you're offering out commission of 2.5%. I see a world where the extra 1.5% goes to the buyer. Okay, just as if they weren't working with an agent. And I see it if the listing agent's offering out 1% and my agreement is to get 3%, that the buyer, the obligation would be borne by the buyer, or it would have to be negotiated into the agreement. Just like you negotiate a sales concession. But I don't think there's any absolute answer to that. So I'm gonna, leave it at that unless you have something else.
Well, it would just be that we would have to know what the commission is from the buyer's agreement. And I think that was part of Glenn's question before.
I don't think so, Scott. I think that
okay.
that the buyer, the pre-approval, if it needs flood insurance or if there's no commission offered, would have to represent that the buyer can perform financially with a commission or no commission.
Okay. And then second question, as you were talking about showing time, listing the commission, which showing time is owned by Zillow, which Zillow started publishing commission, funny enough, just 3 months ago. So
right, but Zillow was publishing the commission from a prior agreement. That's what the DOJ, that's what the plaintiffs counsel wanted the commissions to be disclosed on all the public MLS, on all the public websites. Okay, so the showing time is not a public site, so I'm not going to go too far down there. That will be determined. Okay. Next question.
So Rob, is my understanding that the seller can offer out a concession to the buyer, and offering a commission to the buyer's agent is a separate thing, or is it one or the other?
I see a world where it's one or the other, Michael.
Okay. We just don't know yet, and I'm assuming by what, July 15th or the end of April or end of June, we'll have the guidelines of what we have to offer.
Yeah, exactly. But our North Star is that we deliver service, that it would be an injustice to send a defendant to court without an attorney. It would be an injustice to deny buyers the ability to have representation. Next question, Joe D.
I wanted to share with the group real quick. Yesterday, I received a phone call where the fella said he wanted to sell his house in Princeton, and it came in as a no caller ID. I wish I handled the call a little bit better and ended it sooner, but it was clearly a call about commissions, and I believe he might have been representing some other entity. So my suggestion to everyone is to prepare a response when you get calls like that, because if there are people out there trying to undermine us, I'm just saying, be prepared. I answered them really well, but clearly, you started off the conversation with, I want to sell my house. Well, of course, where's your house? What's your name? My house is in Princeton. And of course, I wanted to try to get a listing. And so I entertained his questions. He goes, well, let's talk about the most important thing, which is the commission. And I said, well, is netting the most amount of money for your house more important than what you think the commission is? So I tried everything that I knew to steer him away from this commission, but he was clearly rehearsed and trained because he was unraveling all the questions that we're all having about how a buyer should get paid and what a listing person should pay out. So I just wanted to pass along to everybody to be prepared for a call like that, because when you're in the middle of the day and you're driving and you get a call in, you're excited to hear somebody say, I want to sell my house. Be ready.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks for sharing that warning, and I think you handled it very good. Maybe not perfect, but congratulations. Next question.
I thought it was perfect.
Rob, what did the plaintiffs actually receive or in the settlement? Like, what is it that they're? I mean, we heard yesterday that it was like $130 for like the 5 original members, and like the attorneys are making like $170,000. Well, like
170 million for the attorneys. Angie, you know what? I'm going to put that in the category of noise, and noise doesn't help me serve my clients. So I really don't even know that answer. I've heard as little as $3 to $5, and I've heard as high as $600. But those are the ranges that I've heard so far.
Okay.
One of my agents in my class the other day said that they're working with a buyer with on a bond program, and they lack a lot of funds. So they said, how would it work if the listing agent is not offering any concessions to the buyer or any concessions to the buyer's agents? What happens to my buyer?
So Ron, this is a free market. So a seller can say, I don't want to pay a commission, right? That's their right, and the consequence is their audience is smaller.
Yeah.
Right. There's no entitlement for us to get a commission or a concession. And, I think it's to the detriment of a seller to do that, but I'm not upset about it. I mean, there are some people that are going to say, hey, I saw the headline and I'm not going to pay a commission now, no matter what you tell me there, Ron. So I think it's a mistake, but that's my opinion. Anybody else? You guys have excellent questions and ladies.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Will there be like meetings on an office basis to discuss this whole buyer agreement thing? I think we would need to have that. That's number one. Number two, regarding the compensation from the buyers that we're talking about, where you're actually saying if the seller is offering less, then the buyer's agent won't be able to get that amount. I think it all depends on the wording that's going to be on the buyer agreement.
I didn't say the buyer agent. If the seller offers 1 and the buyer agreement is 2.5, I believe the buyer agent gets the 2.5 by contract. So I didn't. If I did say that, I misspoke. But my intention is that you're having the seller and the listing agent have a contract. The buyer and the buyer's agent have a contract. Then the seller and the buyer have a contract. So there are 3 separate agreements that govern what's going to happen. All right. So if we can think of it that way, it gives us a little more clarity. I'm going to just say for the New Jersey people, Fran has a couple of announcements when we wrap up on this very hot topic here that are very important for New Jersey team members. Any other questions on this? And I hope I'm not an attorney. I'm just a practitioner that cares a lot about all of you and trying to get you the best information as timely and relevant as possible.
Hey, Rob, can I just share something from the mortgage side, if I could?
Sure.
So I remember in 2013 when the CFPB came in and told all of us mortgage people that we couldn't make money on the front and the back anymore. We were at one point we were able to make money on the front of the loan and on the back of the loan. And CFPB came in 2013 and said, listen, you have to make either, you have to show money on the front or you have to make it on the back. You have to choose one or the other. And so, I mean, we had people completely leave the business. I just wanted to share a little bit of hope that, a lot of people we had thousands of loan originators I know that absolutely just left the business because they couldn't make 4%, 3 or 4% on the loan anymore because for that reason. So
yeah, I don't think, Alan, that this is, I mean, I think the change is going to push people out, but I don't think the economics are going to change like it did in the lending world. And in the lending world, it basically, it was designed to be a little bit more transparent to the consumer. And
I would just say, just don't freak out. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Any other quick questions before we'll turn it over to Fran for a couple of New Jersey updates?
I do have a question. I do have a question.
Okay, Michelle first, and then Jackie. Go ahead.
So I'm not freaked out about having buyers sign contracts or anything like that. My concern is if I'm working with a buyer, they're willing to pay the buyer's commission, but they're capped at 1% or 1.5. Will we have like a Zoom or a meeting saying that how to write up a contract where if we do get a seller paying 1% and now my client is willing to pay 1%, is it 2%? Would I get the 2% if I have a contract with a buyer that's only at whatever they're willing to pay?
So Michelle, my commitment is I won't abandon you or leave you without a pathway to serve your clients. And as soon as that information is discernible, we'll have it. Audrey, you asked a question about will we be doing trainings in the office? I think we're going to be best served by doing trainings this way, maybe hosting them in the office. But this way, I have Rob Durso, I have Fran, I have, our lenders, I have, our team in Florida, Deborah, and everybody there that can make a contribution, as opposed to limiting it to just one office manager or one office. And I will, everybody that's with Remax Select has contact info for me. I'm never ashamed to take a call. If it's something that concerns you, it probably concerns a lot of others. And, I want to honestly and transparently address it. So we got your back. Jackie, you got a question?
Yes, I asked this the last time we were together in the office at a meeting. I'm interested in knowing how you are talking to the agents that are listing. In other words, it sounds to me like everybody's fearful that these listing agents are going to say, and the sellers are going to say, I don't want to pay a commission. I'm not paying a commission. How are we dealing with it? How are your opinion for the listing agents in the office to deal with so that they're not coming across that way?
So that's the exact conversation I had with Ron. Instead of telling him you have to understand, educating them and saying, hey, Jackie, when I put your house on the market, if we don't offer compensation and a buyer has to pay their agent, what do you think that's going to do to the qualified pool of buyers? And Jackie, if we have less buyers, do you think you're going to get a higher or a lower price?
Right.
And now, let's make that decision. How do we want to move forward? Right. So these are the things that have to come across naturally. If you have to think about it, it's too late. Okay. Any other questions that you have? You guys have had some great questions, and I learned so much by trying to serve you. Any other ones?
Hey, Rob, I just want to say one thing. You know what I would really love? I would love for Remax to step up and say, hey, you know what? I know over the next couple of months this is going to evolve, but I would love for Remax, big guys upstairs, just to create a video and a link. So whenever we're addressed with these questions, we say, listen, I know there's a big changes in the industry right now, but I'm just going to send you a link. Here's a quick video. It describes everything and also protects us as agents so we can have a unified voice. So if we ever do get in trouble, we can just say, hey, we sent them the link and this is what we explained to them. Not only that, but it does give us, again, a unified voice in addressing this.
So a couple comments on that, Sal, is one, sometimes it's challenging because, Remax is international and it's also across all the states. So there may be some things that are state specific. And having been a participant in a settlement, they might be a little bit gun shy at putting out some statements that aren't yet fully matured, right? Who knows exactly how things are going to go. And I have access to the senior leadership team there with my questions, and I hope I can do a good job at, addressing them to you locally where it's most relevant, if that helps. and they're not selling houses in New Jersey or Florida or Virginia, so I think we're in the front line here.
Okay.
Thanks, Sal.
Hey Rob, this is Francis from Florida.
How are you?
Hi. I have two questions for you. One, since we are saying that the seller can offer a percentage, whatever percentage to the buyer's agent, and they obviously have their structure that they're offering to their listing agent, are we able to request, or will there be a requirement to see what or if the seller has agreed to offer to buyer's agent to get a hold of that listing agreement?
I mean, I think that they would be required to disclose it somewhere and not be able to choose who they're going to offer it to. Would we be entitled to the agreement? I'm not sure. But I don't think it's that different from where it is now. I mean, in New Jersey, I looked at 2 counties. There were like 250 listings. Only one offered no buyer agency commission. Second question, Fran, was?
Yes. The reason why I say that is because in last December, I had an instance where it was a 6% commission. And I know this is an ethics issue between the listing agent and their client, the seller, but it directly reflected back. And if we're going to change the structure because they're saying that there's antitrust issues, then this would be something in which I think it needs to be more seamless. The listing agent had a 6% listing they put on the MLS 2.25. When we just had a casual conversation, I asked, is there any particular reason? I said, not that it matters, but is there any particular reason why the commission is low? Would the seller offer concessions if anything was asked? And I was told, no, the seller just didn't really want to get into it, and both commissions are low. We get to the closing table when everything is disclosed, and well, at the title, when everything is disclosed, she had a 3.75 commission and I had a 2.25.
So, Fran, I think that, I don't think anything really changes with this. So I think, agents that do that will probably continue to do that. And, we don't know all the facts. I mean, the seller, I'd say most of the time it's probably just an agent, taking advantage of the fact that they're able to get listings. But it could be that, that listing was referred to them. They have to pay out a 35% referral fee and that they're getting the same. But I don't think it really matters. And we can kind of address that, on a more individual level if it comes up again.
Okay, well, in that particular instance there, it really just turned out she was the third agent on the property for the seller. And all the others were offering 3%, 2.5% was which one, and the other one was 3%. This particular one here, I believe that she was just trying to get agents to show the property, offer something, but she really wanted the buyers to come to her. She was trying to drive it that way so that she could get it and that way get all of the commission.
Fran, it's like bad agents will be bad agents. Bad people are bad people. And, what I want to focus on here is, what's changing. And, I'm not a fan of that. But I don't think that materially changes with this proposed change. So I'm going to just go on to another question. And if you have anything more, Fran, you can reach out to me directly. Go ahead.
No, I had another question.
You had another question?
I did. I'm the one that had the agent with, in the meeting that had the client with the bond. What the question that I was asking is that my buyer received the max percentage that she could get for closing cost assistance from the seller, and then I got her a bond to go along with it for $10,000. And in that instance, there was no way that there was any additional money that could have been gotten from the seller at all. We maxed it out. So do you know if there'll be any caps as to what the buyer will be able to get or be able to offer?
So it's possible that maybe, Fran, it's possible maybe the attorneys or the escrow agents or the agents can say, hey, you know what, in order for this to come together, the seller has to pay the entire commission. It doesn't change the economics of the transaction. It's form over substance. So my belief is that would happen. But again, I can't guarantee it. But, if you were at the maximum concessions and you had the seller you move the commission to the seller side of the ledger, then that would eliminate that from being a buyer concession, solve that problem. Rob D, you had a question?
Yeah, apologies. I have to run. I was wondering if we could hear from Fran real quick for those of us that have to leave, and then maybe you could do more questions after.
Sure, Fran, can you give us just a 2-minute update of what's coming down the pike, and then we'll get the forms out?
Sure. The New Jersey people, we had new flood disclosures. They are loaded in .loop. So quite simply, the listing, when you're taking a listing, the seller must complete the new flood risk section and the seller disclosure. If they do not want to complete the rest of the disclosure, it is still mandatory that they need to complete that section. Also, there was a question about, well, what if it's an estate, or what if someone's never lived there? Okay, it is required, and they have maps available that you can research and help guide your seller, or your seller can look at the maps and at least report what is on that, flood map on that disclosure. But it's not exempt just because it's a short sale or a foreclosure or an estate. They must complete that part of the seller's disclosure. On the listing side for rentals, okay, right now, and I think it's going to be separated in .loop, there's a flood risk notice that must be given for rentals. Every rental that's more than 120 days. Anything that's short-term rental under 120 days the law does not apply. This is not just a rule, it's a law. So it is required. So when you're taking your listing for a rental, you must have that you should fill out that flood risk notice at that point in time. And then when someone is coming in with a lease, that form needs to be disclosed to the person that is the proposed tenant, and everybody needs to sign it and execute it. The other thing is, there was questions, does it apply to commercial properties? Yes, it applies to commercial sales and leases. In the New Jersey Realtor Weekly that we did get just yesterday, there are some good points about this. You can click on the link that they have in there, and everything is pretty laid out, answers a lot of questions. Do I have any questions?
So Fran, what I'd like to do is put some Loom or some videos on our New Jersey hub, because there's a lot more changes for rentals that put us at risk.
Yes.
And I think I'm going to refer, if somebody starts doing rentals, hey, make sure you watch this so that you're protected there, because I thank you for bringing all these new changes to our attention.
Yeah, so there are a lot of other things, and maybe next week I can try and work on doing a Zoom and record it so that we can have it saved, because you still have the steam radiator heat disclosure, the lead paint disclosure. There's a lot of things that are now required, and we don't want to get caught in a catch-22 and not be prepared for it. But if anyone has any questions, they can let me know.
So
what's the radiator heat disclosure?
And Mickey, we'll get that out on a Zoom meeting. I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. I will be focusing on developing a buyer conversation to demonstrate how to successfully articulate our value proposition, and do my best to give you the communication skills to articulate that value and earn what we're worth, and take advantage of, and I don't mean take advantage of clients, I mean take advantage of the opportunity to learn this first and win and serve clients better. And then after that, on Friday Masterminds, I'm going to pivot and have a conversation for new listings and what that conversation is going to look like, because I have a clear vision of how I'm going to serve and how I recommend us to communicate to home sellers that want to hire us to get the job done and do it transparently. So those are a couple of topics that are coming on in the future, and I want to be that broker that gets ahead of issues and doesn't lead from behind, that It's not afraid to make a mistake. If I get 98 things right, I make 2 mistakes. Rather than waiting for everything to be perfect, I want to be that broker to give you the ability to serve your clients and to earn an income that you deserve to support your families.
Hey, Rob, I got a question for you. What if a buyer refuses to want to pay a fee, or doesn't have that kind of money to pay a fee on top of the down payment and on top of all the fees for their mortgages and for their house? What do you do? What do they do?
So there's 2 questions there, Gary. One of them is if they can't afford it, that's where they need you more than ever, because you're going to find and structure something to get it accomplished for them, whether there's a off MLS offer of compensation where they don't have to pay you. So that's how that first question gets answered. The second part is if they don't want to pay you, then you don't work with them. Right? We live in an abundant planet, and if somebody doesn't see the value that we provide, we just need to move on. So there will be, there's a there's a marketplace for sale by owner, and there's a marketplace for people who are going to buy and don't want to pay a commission to us. Okay. That's just the way it is, in my opinion. Does that help?
I mean, I kind of see it as it's going to be that the offer that we're going to be putting in is going to have that commission built into it. That's what I kind of see.
Right. But Gary, you said if somebody doesn't want to pay you a commission,
Well, if they don't out of pocket, but if it's built, if it's built into the price and says, hey, this is going to be a concession that's going to go to Remax Select of 2.5%, that's included in this offer price.
Yes.
Is that how it's going to be done?
So Gary, I feel very, very confident that the transactions that can get done today will be able to get done in the future. And the people who don't want to work with an agent that have no loyalty will have a pathway to find out what value we provide the hard way. That's my belief. So I don't think it changes that. And I think you're spot on. Any other questions?
I have a global one, or broader, I guess. Are we going to maintain a relationship with NAR?
I think that's going to be a individual decision. And I'm sorry for our NAR volunteers on the call, but when January comes and they say we're going to shut you out of the MLS if all your members haven't paid their dues,
Right.
I think that's going to probably end. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I really don't, because I think our industry is better for it.
We don't want to discount all the lobbying power. I think that most realtors don't understand all the lobbying that is done for us on a state, local, and national level. And I think that, the ability to also, when we have arbitrations and grievance hearings, to be able to police ourselves through that saves many thousands of dollars. And I think there's benefits that you really, sometimes you may think they don't do anything for you. They do a lot for you. They really do.
I've been personally a strong supporter of RPAC, and I do give my fair share, and I do participate and understand the legislative aspect of it. My concern is because of all the media that's going on right now and the propaganda associated with what this lawsuit, they are translating it to mean. Why is there not more media or a press release to set the record straight? Why are we being attacked as realtors? I mean, I'm licensed. I follow the rules. I'm a rule follower personally. I've got my license from the state of Virginia. I can do the continued education. I follow the rules. I represent my clients to the best of my ability. And I just don't understand why we're not being supported, and why this propaganda and why all this confusion when it could be a press release, a real easy, not attacking or anything like that. I just don't understand.
Bridget, there are press releases, and there's never been a 6% mandatory commission rule.
No.
You and I both know that. So
Right.
You know what they say, real estate's a very local business. It's a very personal business. It's not millions of companies, it's millions of solopreneurs that are helping families. So I would say take your frustration and use it to make calls to the people that trust you and set the record straight with them individually. You control the narrative. That's your prerogative. And it's a damn good reason to reach out to the people that trust us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are more NAR press releases coming out this week also.
But they're not going to, friend, they're not going to get picked up because it's not the narrative that's not the narrative that gets eyeballs on newspapers and media.
Right.
What gets eyes on newspaper and media is the cartel is busted. The era of the 6% commission is over. It's not been.
Yeah, no, we have to put the word out there locally. I mean, you know, to our clients.
Right. But nobody's going to do it for you.
Right.
Bridget, take your frustration and call your top 50 or top 100 people. Say, hey, I just wanted to reach out. You know, you might have heard this going on. I just want to set the record clear. Still here to help you. The substance of the business, according to my broker, isn't going to be changing. There's going to be more transparency for buyers, and it'll enable me to differentiate myself better if you have a real estate need. That's a great message.
Right.
We're almost 2 hours.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hey, Fran, you might have to make the duly noted that I've outlasted a mob of agents with questions. No more? And it's a lovely mob of people with really smart questions that, like, we're here to serve. Nothing really changes. You know, somebody's moved the cheese. Go ahead.
Does this affect the commercial side in the MLS as well?
I think commercial and rentals are not included in it. Fran, is that accurate? To your
As far
knowledge?
as I know, they're not, and we still won't be able to post any commission about the buyer, about the rental in the
buy side.
listing, I think.
On commercials, we won't be able to do that.
Commercial, they don't post the commissions.
No, I mean in the
So-
MLS, we do on commercial listings. That's what I'm
Oh,
talking
no,
about.
the MLSs will not be able to post commissions in the MLS.
Yeah.
The offer
Residential,
compensation will not be there.
residential, commercial, and most likely rentals too, right?
Yeah, and anyone who decides to move forward with doing that, they're probably opening themselves up for separate litigation. So this is really what it was all about.
Look at, you know, and Fran, I think this is amazing, you know, to have over 200 people on a session and, you know, the amount of smart questions. We are here to serve. We're going to give you the best possible advice. Where two rules conflict, we're going to find the solution and give you guidance on how to handle that.
Yep. We all have to have a little faith in ourselves and what we do. We are vital to a real estate transaction. Don't ever let anybody tell you that we're not.
So next Friday's topic is going to be, you know, how to articulate the value and how to have a buyer agency agreement conversation, because these are coming down, they're coming fast. Nothing's stopping us from doing them today. So I'm going to work on, you know, how do I articulate that, give you the lift so that all you need to do is, you know, practice the linguistics of it, and you'll be able to thrive. So last call for questions before I wrap it up, and please, you know, don't have any fear. Thanks, everybody. Have a great, productive weekend. I'll be busy preparing that for you for next Friday. Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rob.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome. You're
Bye, guys.
welcome.
Thank you.